Chinese media in the West is experiencing a significant boom. Ninja 2 is now the 5th highest grossing film of all time. Black Myth Wukong was also one of 2024's biggest releases, and Genshin Impact ranks among the most lucrative media franchises of all time, even surpassing Bop the Builder. And while there are several untranslated Chinese games I'd like to analyze, I keep finding myself drawn to China's crazily robust LARPing scene. I want to discuss Jubensha. To everyone unfamiliar, Jubensha are simulated murder mystery role-playing scenarios where, in groups typically ranging from 6 to 7, one of you is cast as a vile murderer. As a murderer, your goal is to lie and avoid capture, while the innocents are dealt evidence cards to piece together events and hopefully reach the truth. Of course, there are twists and inversions on that basic formula, but that description encompasses the vast majority of Jubensha. In easier to understand terms, they're elevated versions of something like Mafia or Werewolf, or if we're to compare it to other Western developed RPGs, they're kinda like Alice is Missing, but with a lot more verbal shouting as you attempt to discover who, how, and why done it. The whole process normally lasts 3 to 5 hours, about the same length as a D&D session, though some games can go shorter or even way longer. The YouTube channel People Make Games did a great piece on Jubensha, and if you want to learn more about their history and junk, I'd strongly recommend watching that video. As for myself, after acquiring a number of Jubensha through legitimate methods, then translating and running them, I believe that these games have the potential to become a massive phenomenon amongst English-speaking audiences. So, in an effort to direct more attention their way, I selected one popular game from each year between 2018 and 2021, since that time span saw an influx of many of today's most highly acclaimed titles, and I wanted to give my candid impressions, as well as provide some insight into what localizing these games would entail. I'll try my darndest to avoid spoilers, but with that said, minor spoilers are inevitable. Watch at your own discretion. Woman by the Window is honestly pretty terrifying. You can tell because I'm playing early 2010s creepypasta music. The story opens late at night, you and a few other forum users have hopped online to discuss a decade-old cold case, and then absolute madness ensues. Also homicide. What is everyone's link to this slaying? You have to find that out. This game is an old favorite for Jubensha fans, and if we're judging by horror factor alone, it definitely ranks highly, especially since this game was inspired by a real murder case from 1996. The similarities are largely surface level, but that slight injection of reality makes the narrative stupidly eerie. There's also some chilling video supplements played at certain intervals, which heighten the tension even further. The first step in pretty much every Jubensha is character selection. Now, some Jubensha venues and scripts will simply assign or let players pick characters. Others, like Woman by the Window, include a brief personality questionnaire in which you find a character who most aligns with your values. For instance, would you kill Abraham Lincoln for $100 grand?
You're a bad president!
There is then an introductory video, or the GM can act out the introduction, and players are handed a character booklet. Inside, you read until you reach a point at which you're supposed to stop. This first section provides you with your character history. Players will have enough information after this initial reading to glean their established relationships with others at the table. Your PC may like or perhaps even cover for another character, whereas someone else may want you dead. But what I love about Woman by the Window is that everyone is role-playing as their username, so identities are never quite certain. This game does have a localization through the site Z9, but man, I would kill for an official Discord integrated version. With the reading finished, you introduce yourselves in character and solve a brief, low-stakes introductory puzzle. A lot of Jubensha, like Infected on a Rainy Night, have introductory puzzles that serve as icebreakers. Afterward, you read more of the script, then have another quick round of open discussion before receiving a batch of evidence cards. To receive these cards, you can either search a location or a person, not including yourself, and then receive a clue corresponding to your investigated subject. Do note, though, that trickier Jubensha may allow players to fabricate or even destroy clues. We then swap between open discussion and the doling out of more clue cards for a time, occasionally playing audio or video files to enhance immersion. But then, after sufficient discussion, there's a big, spoiler-heavy, climactic scripted event, and from there, it's time for everyone to make their final votes for the killer, as well as a few other spoiler-heavy outcomes. As all of this is happening, players may have bonus objectives too, like figure out why X character broke up with you last spring. Woman by the Window is definitely a beginner-friendly game. There's a decent chance of failure, but difficulty-wise, it's not that bad. Overall, this game rocks. I'd say its biggest strengths are its atmosphere and cast of characters with personalities so bonkers yet fun to inhabit. I could harp on about the pros of this Jubensha, but it's also pertinent to note the game's numerous shortcomings, as they're indicative of problems with general Jubensha localization. You see, when I stated that I adored Woman by the Window, I actually did so with an implied Texas-sized asterisk directly adjacent. First off, some of these deductions don't make a lot of sense. I do love it when these games go full-on crazy, but certain developments, particularly one regarding the central murder, it's just too far-fetched. My second and more glaring issue is that this game includes, to put it delicately, content that is somewhat problematic. It was mentioned in that original People Make Games video that the 2 translated games they found included SA as a major plot point, and Woman by the Window has much of the same. I want to make it clear that not all Jubensha feature such off-putting content. In fact, the other games in this video, while delving into dark subject matter, never go overboard. But a lot do. Brothel, Evil Ghost Road, Haunted Basement, Faintia 1928, Alice in Murderland, Dark Ghost Council, Story You've Never and Heard, 2 more games by Woman by the Window's author, Falling into the Abyss and Record of Another World, have plot beats that would force me to place these games in their own special tier. I'm anti-censorship as much as the next bloke, and there is merit in translating Jubensha accurately, but it wouldn't hurt to include a slightly sanitized variant for players who'd rather not deal with all those nasty bits. The worst part is that, if the game gets weird, you may freak out all the babes. While Jubensha first picked up steam after the airing of game shows like Who's the Murderer, it wasn't until 2019 that Jubensha titles started popping up left and right, like the faction game Lonely City and the hardcore game Tree Rings. Many Jubensha fans claim that you can't call yourself a script-killing fan without playing Tree Rings, and you know what? I kind of agree. The game takes place in an abandoned village about 100 miles outside of the city. All that's there are abandoned houses nestled smack dab in the middle of a valley. In 2016, a group of people are summoned by a mysterious stranger who lures them with the promise of the truth. Each of them has lost something important under strange circumstances, and they're desperate to know why. Overall, another great cast of PCs, whereas Woman by the Window's characters were entertaining because they all had insane secrets and toxic personalities, Tree Rings leans heavily into the emotional dimension of script killing. Woman by the Window was straight up horror, but this story is more of a drama. The script booklets here are slightly longer too to reflect the greater emphasis on character. Also of note in regard to structure, this game lumps together both the backstory and the case information for players' initial reading, instead of having players read a section, then stop, then read another section. As for the plot, this is where things get really interesting. You see, it was around this time where Jubensha started leaning into fantastical plots. Most modern-era Jubensha include some speculative elements. For instance, the 7-player beginner game Murder in Space fits squarely into the sci-fi genre. Tree Ring's supernatural element is not immediately apparent, but while remaining as vague as possible, it is incredibly original. I've neither seen nor read anything like the twist in this game, and it all unfolds like a thing of beauty. The strongest aspect of this game is that central twist. Plus, uncovering what happened in everyone's pasts and why they're all dragged to this village is great fun. Bending too, as long as you perform halfway decently through the game, has stellar payoff. There is a bit of an annoying part with the finale though. While I love untangling the core mystery, solving the murder itself is notably less fun. In short, this game is not the most beginner-friendly because, in order to deduce the culprit, math is necessary. However, if you have an annoying STEM major friend, it's their time to be useful. I also haven't played the localized version of the game at Rabbit Hole Recreation because I don't live in Colorado, so maybe they've changed a few things up, but I can't say for sure. My only other criticism is that the setting is kinda mid. I never really felt a strong sense of place for Ia Village. It's not horrible, but a map or something comparable would have heightened our sense of place. These notes are minor in the grand scheme of things though, and can be attributed to Tree Rings being a relatively early Jubensha. It still is the benchmark for a quality emotional, hardcore Jubensha, and has fully earned its reputation as a classic. Both Tree Rings and Suspect Number 7 are hardcore games, yet the latter is set squarely in reality with no magic shenaniganry whatsoever. You see, the norm for modern Jubensha are fantastical stories, oftentimes with an emphasis on role-playing over puzzle solving. Not as many recent popular titles are straightforward murder mysteries, yet Suspect Number 7 is a great showcase of what classic puzzle solving scenarios can achieve. On May 16, 2020, wealthy businessman Hong Qing invites several friends and associates to his private residence, Banshan Villa, but things turn kinda pear-shaped when a mass kidnapper holds him hostage and imprisons the guests. A police investigator, a CEO type, a young celebrity anchor, the victim's adopted heir, an American business associate, and the victim's bodyguard. What makes Suspect Number 7 stand out is a massive twist partway through that forces every character to slow down for a second and reevaluate what exactly their goals are. Some games, like the notoriously convoluted Dead Waken and the Phantom Knight, are distinguished by their single insane midpoint reversal. And for that reason, Suspect Number 7 is the most difficult game I am discussing here. Without giving too much away, players will need to familiarize themselves quickly with the mansion layout and timeline of events if they wish to expose the killer. I wish I had more to say about the game, but honestly, it's just an all-around solid title, a case I'd be thrilled to see translated at some point. It even includes some floor plans, which are always a welcome addition. So, to avoid having this section be way too short, I'd like to go on a quick tangent about Jubensha categorization. The 5 most prominent are as follows. We can consider mystery games the default Jubensha experience. You get clues and solve a murder. Mystery games also encompass the beginner and hardcore difficulty subgenres. For reference, Suspect Number 7 is a hardcore reasoning game because deductions are tricky. Horror games are exactly how they sound. They seek to create a sense of unease and frighten players. Horror-themed Jubensha venues often go all out on props and room design to amplify the atmosphere. These games are usually best experienced in person. Emotional Jubensha, like Farewell Poem, are tragic, character-driven games that evoke an emotional response within players. Emotional games can often overlap with couples games, which involve PCs pairing off by the end. Sometimes one individual in that pair dies, and it's just a major bummer. Fun games are light comedies. Sometimes there's not even a murder mystery. One example is Guide to Unreliable Magic, which is 100% copyright infringement, but whatever. And lastly, mechanism Jubensha are largely gameplay-centric. For instance, one of the few translated English Jubensha, The Dark Council, features combat mechanics which comprise a good chunk of the game time. Another mechanism game, and one that I think is actually quite better, is the historical adventure Polar Knight. All that terminology in mind though, most Jubensha fall under not one of these categories, but a mixture, including Charles' life is one mired in death and misfortune. Luckily, he's never alone. You see, Charles has what the kids call DID, dissociative identity disorder, a condition that evenly partitions his mind into 7 distinct personalities. Each takes control one day of the week. One enjoys exercise, another is a gamer, another cooks. They proceed in this manner for several years, and everything is peaceful. Despite the situation, the boys maintain a sense of privacy and autonomy by recording their activities across 7 booklets. None of them are permitted to examine the contents of their alters' diaries, although lately things have been out of place in their apartment. Why are these guests appearing all of a sudden? Who are they? Soon enough, it all becomes abundantly clear. One of your personalities is lying, and soon a lot of people will die. This game's title actually has a few different translations. Personally, I got Diary of a Yandere Boy from the localization team at Storyboxed, though some sources translate it as Diary of a Schizophrenic Boy or Diary of a Sickly Boy. And Reddit user CreepyTrip9638 says that the most accurate translation is Split Personality Diary of a Yandere Boy. Of the games I'm discussing, this one is my favorite, at least in terms of core plot. Tree rings may have an emotional payoff, Suspect Number 7 has a great murder method, but Yandere Boy isn't merely unhinged. No, it's more accurate to say that the hinges are gone and have been replaced with sticks of dynamite. First off, the presentation, which is so slick. Instead of the plain but functional player booklets, Yandere Boy goes the extra mile by stylizing its character scripts like a series of diary entries scribbled by a child. There are even a few illustrations in the margins. However, you're not actually taking the role of Charles in this game, rather, players inhabit the roles of 7 detectives who are each assigned to study a different diary after a tragic event occurs. After a quick opening puzzle, you're given a low-stakes warm-up. Your group has to deduce which player is assigned to which day. It's a fun challenge, but in the process the game exposits some thoroughly disturbing lore about Charles' childhood. There is then a small theater performance where everyone goes around reading from a script in character for a scene. Afterwards, we jump forward to when Charles is 20. The goal now is to solve a locked room murder. Each chapter follows a similar format until you find the culprit. The People Make Games video mentioned that the game masters, or GMs, don't do much on the role-playing front, since their task is more so to distribute clue cards. But that isn't always the case. Yandere Boy actually has full sequences with NPCs, and saw plagiarism. While one could relegate these segments to a written summary, having it acted out is great for immersion's sake. The only other note that's worth mentioning about the gameplay process is that Jubensha occasionally feature Easter eggs. For instance, there is the Dongjun Academy in Jinling has the murder victim holding an official seal, and the image on that seal is the logo for the company that produced the game. That's how most Easter eggs work, but in Yandere Boy, the Easter egg is as follows. Get all players' phone numbers and addresses at the start of the game. Then, after everything's done, send them threatening messages in character as a murderer, and say that you know where they live. I really hope that I just didn't translate that last bit correctly, but I don't know, dog. If I had one other critique of Yandere Boy, it's that the conclusion is a tad abrupt. Things just kind of end without closure. I did hear, though, that the Storyboxed translation project does change the ending so that it's more definitive, although that does leave me curious to how they would hypothetically adapt Yandere Boy's sequel, Love Diary of a Yandere Boy, because yes, popular Jubensha do have sequels. Brothel 2, Incoming Call 2, and Dongjun Academy even got a prequel. I was stoked to read Love Diary, but sadly, while there was a definite improvement with the art, it felt more like an integral side story rather than a proper continuation of the events of Yandere Boy. Worse, it lacked one of the biggest strengths of its predecessor, character. It's easy to sympathize with Charles' struggle in Yandere Boy. The crap he endures throughout the script is sobering to say the least. This game is classified as a reasoning scenario, but I'd argue it's got emotional elements too. I guess that's why the studio recently released Yandere Boy 3, and it's apparently a fully blown sequel that resolves all the narrative threads from the first game. I haven't experienced it myself, but from reading the reviews, folks seem to like it.
What's next?
For US Jubensha fans, there are a handful of purveyor options if you'd like to purchase your own, but there are two in particular I would like to point out. Z9 seems legit, and people have bought stuff from them. And I don't want to decry anyone who's bringing Jubensha to the States, especially at relatively reasonable prices, yet I'm not a fan of the AI art here. Conversely, KMS is a Singaporean group that has done 3 original Jubensha, Laboratory of Death, Melody of Waves, and their latest, The Secret Tribe. I've heard good things about these, and though I haven't run them yet, Melody of Waves was given the live-action treatment on their YouTube channel. Check it out if you're curious. There's also Storyboxed, but their site appears kind of dead right now, and their one Jubensha was mired in translation errors, it included off-putting content, it was expensive, and honestly the game itself is just kind of mid. It's a real shame though, since they were in the process of translating Yandere Boy. And that about wraps things up. My purpose in making this video was to give English-speaking Jubensha fans guidance based off my months of research. I've also left plenty of room for further discussion too. There's the topic of single-player Jubensha, Japanese script-killing games known as Metamisu, the revulsive world of AI-generated script-killing games, my personal experience navigating the Chinese file-sharing service known as Baidu, and even a 10-plus hour Jubensha that starts around noon and continues until well after midnight. Jeez. I don't know about y'all, but I find this kind of stuff way more entertaining than some dumb Star Wars hotel thing.
Oh, I said it's super exciting. Put down grip. Very good.
More importantly, I want Jubensha to be popular because the world of today conduces loneliness, and communities have become increasingly fractious and sparse. The obliteration of third places was a mistake. I like to hope that Jubensha could be an easy and convenient way for people to interact with each other. But I'm also dancing around what the real best Jubensha experience is, and that is Villain Feast, a 12-person game in which you embody the roles of some of fiction's most deranged villains: Catwoman, Poison Ivy, Riddler, Biff from Back to the Future, Sherlock Holmes.